Thank you. I'm going to call this meeting back to order. We had a brief in-camera conversation, and I'd like to resume the meeting by starting out with a welcome to those who are in the gallery and anyone joining us from home. Just a reminder, in addition to this being on our YouTube page and online, you can also find it on Tell-Il. It'll be there for the next week or so. I'll also acknowledge that we are gathered here today in Unama'ki, the land of the fog, a part of Mi'kma'ki, the unceded traditional territory of the Mi'kmaq people since time immemorial. We honor and thank the Mi'kmaq for sharing their land and home with us. So I'd ask that everyone stand insofar as you're able for the playing of O Canada.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command.
Car ton bras s'est porté l'épée, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Okay, so I'll ask that the CAO now take the roll call of councillors.
Thank you, Madam Chair. District 1, Councillor Sean Sampson.
Present.
District 2, Warden Lowe's Landry.
Present.
Thank you. District 3, Councillor Brian Marchand.
Present.
Thank you. District 4, Deputy Warden Amanda Mumriquette.
Present.
Thank you. And District 5, Councillor Brent Sampson.
Present.
Thank you, sir. Madam Chair, the roll has been called.
Thank you very much. Our next item on the agenda is recommendations from in-camera. I do not believe we have any, unless I'm missing anything anybody would like to add. So moving on from there, you have an agenda in front of you that was circulated last week. Are there any errors or omissions? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve as circulated. Moved by Councillor Brian Marchand. Can we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Brent Sampson. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carried. The minutes, there are two sets of minutes in your package. First, on page 5 in your package, if you're looking online, is the minutes of the special meeting held on April 7th. So if there are any errors or omissions, happy to hear those. But if not, I would entertain a motion to adopt the minutes of the April 7th meeting. Moved by Councillor Brian Marchand. Can I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Sean Sampson. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carried. The next set of minutes is from our regular March meeting, which was held on March 28th. Those were circulated, and I would look for a motion to adopt unless there's some concerns with them. Moved by Councillor Brent Sampson that we adopt those minutes. Seconded by Councillor Sean Sampson. No discussion on that. So all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carried. Next item on the agenda is one of two different question periods. Question period number 1, which is where we are now. So again, the number is 226-9885. We have 3 reports, committee reports. So Committee of the Whole, Audit Committee, and Bylaw and Policy. So this question period is before we vote on everything in that those reports. We have opened it up in case anyone has any concerns. So there's a delay, and it's always an awkward silence at this point, but hearing no questions, we'll move on to the three reports. So Deputy Warden Mumbercat is representing us as our straight region rep at the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities, and so she's joining us virtually this evening. Because of some early morning meetings in Yarmouth. God love you. So we'll turn it over to Deputy Warden Mumbercat for the first of three reports. This one is the Committee of the Whole report. Over to you, Deputy Warden.
Okay, thanks, Warden. Is my sound quality okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is the Committee of the Whole report for April 2026. The committee met on April 14th, 2026. The committee discussed the new agreement with the Richmond County Truckers Association for the transportation of municipal solid waste and recycling. I move that Council accept the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole and authorize staff to proceed with execution of a new agreement with the Richmond County Truckers Association for transportation of municipal solid waste and recycling with a 12% increase to the base trucking rates, and further recommend that the base rates be adjusted annually on April 1st to reflect changes in CPI for the 12 months prior. The new base rates effective April 1st, 2026 would be $411.60 and $517.44 at 0% TAN surcharge for shipments to Guysborough and Edwardsville.
Okay, I'm going to have us acknowledge that it was Councillor Brent Sampson, who I believe was first out of the mark. So moved by Deputy Warden, seconded by Councillor Brent Sampson. Any other discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Carry on.
Okay. The committee discussed the Alameda New Horizons Seniors Club grant request for the Tier 1 Community Grant Funds for $1,000 submitted as the host organization for the Persons with Impaired Vision. I move that Council accept the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole and defer the Alameda New Horizons Seniors Club grant application submitted as the host organization for the Persons with Impaired Vision group until the 2026-2027 budget is approved.
Okay, we have a seconder. Seconded by Councillor Brian Marchand. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries.
The committee discussed the Richmond Rise Volleyball Association sponsorship request for $1,000. I move that the council accept the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole and defer the Richmond Rise Volleyball Association sponsorship request until after the approval of the 2026-2027 budget.
Okay. We have a mover, seconded by Councillor Sean Sampson. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries.
The committee discussed the letter from John Bain, Director of Eastern District Planning Commission, regarding staff appointments. I move that council accept the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole and accept the Eastern District Planning Commission staff appointment as outlined in the letter to council.
So we'll...
And would you like me to read those into the record now, Warden?
Yes, I think we'll accept a seconder and then have you read them. Can I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Brian Marchand. So for the record, we need to read these positions in. So over to you, Deputy Warden, for that.
Okay. So the positions are Building Inspection, Building Inspectors Andre Sampson and Sean Donovan. Assistant Building Inspector Todd Sampson. Alternates David McKenzie, Jonathan Martin, and Luke Ross. For Development Officer, Andrew Jones. Alternates are John Bain, Hector Joshi, Brendan McDonald, Kristen Scanlon, and Michaela. Sorry, Warden, it's cut off. I'm just going to.
Tate.
Michaela.
Tate. T-A-I-T.
Thank you. Tate. T-A-I-T. Assistant Development Officers would be Todd Sampson, Heike Bruckner, and Andre Sampson. Fire Inspectors appointees are Andre Sampson and Todd Sampson. Alternates are Sean Donovan, David McKenzie, Jay Martin, Jonathan Martin, and Luke Ross. Dangerous or unsightly premises administrator appointees are Sean Donovan and John Bain. Alternates are Todd Sampson, Luke Ross, and Andre Sampson. And special constables special constables, building, fire codes, dangerous or unsightly premises, and land use bylaws. The appointees are Sean Deneran and Jonathan Martin.
Great, thank you. So those are the officials, and we've had a mover and seconder. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries.
The committee discussed the request from Terry Smith, CEO of Destination Cape Breton, regarding amendments to the MOCR marketing levy bylaw for short-term rental platforms. I move that Council accept the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole and refer the marketing levy bylaw to the Bylaw and Policy Committee.
Seconded by Councillor Brian Marchand. Any other discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries.
The committee discussed the request from Donna Lugar, Vice President of the Nova Scotia Lyme and Tick-Borne Diseases Association, to proclaim May as Lyme Disease Awareness Month. I move that Council accepts the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole and proclaim May as Lyme Disease Awareness Month.
Okay, so I will have a seconder, and that is Councillor Brent Sampson. Before we vote on that, I will we'll vote on it first, and then I'll read the proclamation. So all those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion is carried, and the proclamation is as following. Whereas Lyme disease is a serious illness caused by the bite of a black-legged tick infected with the bacterium Borrelia burgdorferi. I had to Google that. Whereas black-legged ticks carrying a variety of diseases or illnesses can now be found in all parts of Nova Scotia, whereas education and practicing preventative measures such as daily tick checks and proper tick removal can help reduce your chances of contacting tick-borne diseases. Therefore, be it resolved that I, Warden Lois Landry, on behalf of Richmond County Municipal Council, do hereby proclaim May 2026 as Lyme Disease Awareness Month. Over to you, Deputy Warden.
This concludes the Committee of the Whole report for the month of April 2026, and I move its adoption.
Okay, so any other discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, it's a busy night for you, Deputy Warden. The Audit Committee report is next, and I will pass it over to you to deliver this report.
Okay, thank you. The Audit Committee report for April 2026. The committee met on April 8th, 2026. The committee discussed the Audit Committee terms of reference. I move that Council accept the recommendation of the Audit Committee and refer the Audit Committee terms of reference with the adjustments to the Bylaw and Policy Committee.
Okay, so we have a mover and seconder, and that is no other. Oh, sorry, Councillor Brian Marchand. Yeah. Yep, seconded. Okay, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carried.
The committee discussed the credit card policy. I move that Council accept the recommendation of the Audit Committee and refer the credit card policy to the Bylaw and Policy Committee for review.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor, seconded by Councillor Sean Sampson. Any other discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carried.
This concludes the Audit Committee report for April 2026, and I move its adoption.
Okay, so we have a motion to adopt the report, seconded by Councillor Brent Sampson. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carried. Okay, our next report is lengthy in that we accomplished a lot in the month of April. And so for folks who are following along with that, it is pages 18 to 40 of your package, because for most of these policies, they're actually provided in this package. So I'll turn it again over to Deputy Warden for the Bylaw and Policy Committee report.
Okay, thanks, Warden. The Bylaw and Policy Committee report for April 2026. The committee met on April 14th and 16th, 2026. The committee discussed the dry fire hydrants policy. I move that Council accept the recommendation of the Bylaw and Policy Committee and adopt the dry fire hydrants policy as presented with the following changes. In section 1.1, replace the last sentence to read, "This policy applies to dry fire hydrants installed after January 1, 2024. In section 2.4, replace the first sentence to read, Any dry fire hydrants installed under this policy will be owned by the municipality. And in section 3.3A, add an S to the word hydrant.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor, seconded by Councillor Brian Marchand. Is there any discussion on that? I do just want to, for folks who are following along, this policy is actually found on pages 20 to 24, and the changes that Deputy Warden Mumbercat just referenced are included in yellow in that package, just so that you can see what that is. Any other discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried, and I want to cry because that was a long time coming, that one. So excellent. Carry on.
The committee discussed the 2026-2027 grants policy. I move that council accept the recommendation of the bylaw policy committee and adopt the 2026-2027 grants policy as presented with the following change. In section 5.4C, add the word applicant before the word financial.
Okay, can we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Sean Sampson. And again, for those who are following along, this policy in its entirety is included in the package on pages 25 to 34, and the change that's referenced in this motion is included in yellow in these pages. So is there any discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carried.
The committee discussed the road name change policy. I move that council accept the recommendation of the bylaw policy and repeal the road name change policy.
Oh, yes, this is two separate motions. So we have a
This is two
motion to
separates, yeah.
repeal. Yep, seconded by Councillor Brent Sampson. Discussion on that? This is an old policy that existed that is not correct somehow. Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries.
I move that council...
Sorry.
The procedure of how this states is to be done is incorrect.
We have a motion, to create a new policy that is
Yeah.
Okay. I move that council accept the recommendation of the bylaw policy committee and refer the development of a new road name change policy to the bylaw policy committee.
Okay. Seconded by Councillor Brent Sampson. Any other discussion on that? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
The committee discussed the use of business days versus calendar days when publishing agendas and meeting packages on the Richmond County website. I move that council accept the recommendation of the bylaw policy committee and revise the publication of council, committee reports, and meeting packages on municipal website policy as follows. In sections 2.3 and 3.7, remove the word business. And in section 2.3, insert the word either before the word council and remove the comma after council. And I believe those changes are also reflected in yellow in the policy further down, right? So.
Yes, in pages 35 and 36. Is there a seconder on that motion? Seconded by Councillor Sean Sampson. Yeah, and just for folks, we have multiple policies that talk about the timeline we follow for posting information about meetings, and we had contradictory information in that in one place it would say business and in another it would just say days. So this is meant to clean up all of our policies so they're consistent. Any other conversation on that matter? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carried.
The committee discussed the structure of the solid waste management facility tipping fees. I move that council accept the recommendation of the bylaw policy committee and direct staff to provide a staff report by the end of January 2027 on alternative ways to structure the tipping fees.
So moved by the Deputy Warden, seconded by Councillor Brent Sampson. Any discussion on that? So this is just a report to come to us next year about how we might look at tipping fees. So all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries.
The committee discussed the audit committee terms of reference. I move that council accept the recommendation of the bylaw policy committee and adopt the audit committee terms of reference as presented.
We have a seconder, seconded by Councillor Brian Marchand. And just for folks that sounds like a lot, on April 8th, we had an audit committee meeting and we made some suggestions for terms of reference for the audit committee, but then we had bylaw and we referred those to bylaw and policy, which we had meetings on the 14th and the 16th, and so it was at that time that we accepted those recommendations. So this actually is a long-standing action item, item number 118 on our, so I think that will close that item out. So any other questions about terms of reference? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carried.
This concludes the monthly report of the Bylaw and Policy Committee for April 2026, and I move its adoption.
Okay, so can I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Sean Sampson. Any discussion on that report? Quite a lot in that report. A lot of work being done on bylaw and policies here in Richmond. So all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so that moves us on to new business. We have one item under new business, which is the title is Loosedale and District Volunteer Fire Department Boundary Request, and there's a staff memo. So there's quite a bit of information in packages about this, and I just want to be clear that all of it is considered as we discuss this topic. So pages 41 to 54 include a good deal of information. There's a letter from the chief of Loosedale Fire Department. There is some reports from our emergency measures coordinator. There's photocopies from the 2019/2020 report that was done in Richmond County around fire services. But I just want to make sure, and I emailed you all yesterday, but I want to be sure for those folks even in the gallery or in the media. In addition, in our package is on pages 64 and 65 of your package. There is a letter from Chief Bradley Malcolm from the West Bay Road and District Volunteer Fire Department that is also speaking to this issue. And so we had a request from the fire department there, West Bay Road and District, to present to council, but our policies don't permit that. But it does allow for folks who have concerns about items on the agenda to provide correspondence for us. So many thanks to Chief Malcolm and his team who turned that around very quickly so that it could be included in the package, not just for council, but the package that went out to the public. So just the items are that we would be sifting through as we make this decision, pages 41 to 54, and the letter from Chief Malcolm on pages 64 and 65. So there is a staff briefing note attached. The rough summary of such is that there is a portion at the western end of Richmond County that has been for many years serviced by coverage provided by the West Bay Road and District Volunteer Fire Department. And we have had a request from Loosedale. So that fire department is based in Inverness County. And so we have had a request from Loosedale to assume responsibility for that coverage area. So happy to throw this out for folks who, if they want to consider. So just looking ahead, what we are being asked to do by virtue of the way the province rolls out this is the motion that we would need to make if we were interested in doing so is that council accept the request of the Loosedale and District Volunteer Fire Department to assume full responsibility for Richmond County area currently serviced by the West Bay Road and District Volunteer Fire Department, which is McIntyre Lake to Cleveland, down to Lower River and Evanston, north of the Strait Hospital, and that there would be an effective date. And Danielle, I have that written, so I can provide that too. So I'm happy to turn that over to councillors for some discussion or a motion and a seconder within a discussion and we vote on it, but I'm happy to have conversations either way. Go ahead, Councillor Marchand.
Thank you, Warden. Has anybody checked into, is this something we would normally be voting on? Like, one of the letters here speak of changing boundaries, and we're really not changing any boundaries here. I don't know how this got set up 30 years ago, but West Bay Road was looking after a coverage area that was within the boundaries of Loosedale. and District Volunteer Fire Department. So
So the province of Nova Scotia has an Department of Emergency Management boundary change form, and at the bottom it says the boundary change must be approved by the municipality to which the fire department belongs. So it is a requirement through provincial regulations that if a change is to be made, we would have to endorse it or make it.
okay, again, I'm going to say, we're not changing boundaries. There was never boundaries for the West Bay Road Fire Department to have that coverage area. So I realize the form is there and it needs to be sent, and Steve has done a great job of the document, but I'm wondering why we are involved here in having to vote on this. This Luzdale's asking to reassume the coverage of a boundary that was theirs, and I don't know where these boundaries were set whenever the fire department started, but I'm wondering why this is coming here, because we realize it's contentious on either side here, and people, as the letter states, you know, we're shocked or surprised or upset. So why is it something that council needs to be involved? We're not physically going out like other municipalities and change boundaries. We're amalgamating fire departments or whatever. So as far as the province is concerned, since no documentation from what I'm reading was ever sent in, the province would never ever know Luzdale's district or boundary had changed. If it's documented there, I don't know how the documentation
Well,
happens.
I'm quite certain that if somebody in this zone that we're looking at calls 911, today, the person receiving that 911 call would call the West Bay Road Fire Department.
But that's not a boundary thing. That's set up with
This
the
is the
dispatcher.
form that talks about boundary change
That's-
for
yeah.
911.
That-
So
that's
in
the
order,
dispatch.
whatever, it is a fire department boundary change form for 911. In
Mm-hmm.
order for 911 to dispatch the correct fire department,
Yeah.
it needs to go through this process, which it says right on here, it must be approved by the municipality. So and we collect the fire levy, we need a motion of council to send that money to the whichever fire department. We have that money in our coffers. Go ahead, Councillor Sampson, Brent Sampson.
So I'm prepared to make the motion that the Lewisdale and District Fire Department take over responsibility for emergency response coverage in the areas of Richmond County currently serviced by the West Bay Road Fire Department. I feel like we should probably have a motion and a seconder before we get into further discussion.
I would like, if you're agreeable, before you do. I do believe that motion should have an effective date. And so if you could start with an effective date, and if we want to amend it, we could do that with an amendment. But so we're clear on the, so do you have a date in mind?
I would say effective June 1st.
Okay, so we could always amend that. But yeah, so to be clear, what
May
we're
is
doing.
Too
Yeah.
close.
Yep,
Let's
so the motion is for Luzdale to take on this, this area effective June 1st. Do you want to second that motion, Councillor Marchand?
I'll second.
Okay.
Second for discussion, yes.
Okay. So that is what we are discussing now. If at some point anybody wants to amend it to be a different date, we would entertain that through a motion to amend. Go ahead.
So the question I would have, I guess, is to ask staff, do you feel June 1st would be a reasonable time frame, or would July be better? Only because I'm thinking, I believe we want to discuss if there's ways to properly notify residents. I mean, even though, you know, if they call 911, that's, you know, that this is all done behind the scenes automatically, but just to give people the knowledge ahead of time that they're aware of changes being made, I think that's only fair. So is June 1st a reasonable amount of time to ask staff to come up with a bit of a plan for notification, or would July be more agreeable?
If I may as well, Madam Chair, I think July 1st gets us halfway through the year as well, right, calendar year, right? So that may work as well, plus it gives them a little more time, but June 1st, this form goes in very quickly, and it will change very quickly, and like you said, the people are not calling a new number, they're still calling the same number, so.
As much as I wanted us to have a date, I do think we should probably discuss the meat of this motion first, perhaps, and then land on a date should we decide to deal with that. But at some point, we would want, the motion is that at some point we would make this change. So I'm looking for conversation now around whether or not this is something we want to approve. So go ahead, Deputy Warden.
Thank you, Warden. I guess one of the questions that I have is related to response time. There's reference to response, but there's not really some good data on, what this would mean for response time for folks living in the area currently covered by West Bay. So I don't know if CAO, if we have that kind of information. Is there any comment that we can provide on that? Or?
I guess there's a couple things that I would say in response to that. First is we have the chief of Loosedale saying that they have done an operational assessment and that they are confident that they can respond. I will say that I Googled a little bit, and there are some areas that, as you drive, are no farther to go to Loosedale and so on, and certainly no farther than other parts of other fire departments' drives. So I don't know if we've gotten that. I don't know if we would have that. I don't think we have that specific data.
I'm wondering if maybe if the chief in Loosedale might be able to share that, an operational analysis with us. I appreciate that it's been done, and but I feel a little bit like I have, what I mean. I'm not exactly sure what it would mean to the residents who live there because I don't have a thorough understanding of what it would look like.
Okay. So we don't have our emergency measures person here this evening.
He's off.
He's off today, this week. So okay, we'll acknowledge that and maybe just see where others, what others are feeling, and then come back to that. Any other conversations?
You want to second it first, or?
I think you already did second it, yes. Yeah.
So, anybody else want to speak? I guess I'm going to go back to this boundary thing. I'm reading that there was no documentation from 30 years ago. So the form that goes to 911 is a boundary change. And where are we making this boundary change is what I'm wondering. I can't get my head around it. If there was no documentation from 30 years ago, it was a handshake, something was sent to somebody so that, as you say, I call 911, I'm in this area, the decision is made to call West Bay Road instead of Bluesdale. We definitely have to get that to the dispatcher, whoever they are. But why are we doing it as a boundary change? Because that's where I'm kind of stuck here.
Right, and I'm not terribly surprised by this. I think what we've seen in Chief Malcolm's correspondence is that this has been a 30-year arrangement. And so the decision for West Bay Road and District Volunteer Fire Department, I'm just going to call West Bay Road because that's a long handle, but the decision for West Bay Road would have been made with paperwork of the day 30 years ago. So whether that handshake was good enough back then, the status quo is that when somebody in that area calls 911, West Bay Road is dispatched. The new requirements from the province are that to make any change to status quo, this form needs to be completed with a motion of council. That's how council makes decisions.
Oh, no, I understand that, but it's termed a boundary change. We're not making that. The coverage area we're changing.
I do try to stay in my lane.
This is the way it's got to go. And,
right. The documentation of the day says.
I'm not against that this has to happen. It's the fact of, I thought this could have all happened between the departments, could have been done, contact gets done to the dispatch system, and it would be done. We're here voting on this because we're not really making a change, but I'm not against it. If Loosedale wants to do it, I understand West Bay Road, isn't happy with it. The date, I think, as you say, you can have it done by June the 1st. Notifying the residents, notifying them, they're still going to call 911, as you've all stated. So there's no real change other than who's getting there, and maybe their concerns will be addressed to us as for time, if they think there's a time issue. But, I mean, I'm in favor, I guess.
Okay, Councillor Marshall, Deputy Warden, do you have?
Yeah, I just have one more question, I guess, and I would agree, like, with the information we got from Steve Marcellus, I mean, it's really clear, this would make, especially our planning forward process, in line with what the provincial government is changing too, like, would make it, I think, a lot better, but, I did have a question about the financial implications for, West Bay Road, and it's really like, maybe related to the start date, the effective date, as you said, Warren. So, I noticed that in Chief Malcolm's letter, he said, if you go ahead, could we retain this for the current fiscal 26, 27, and then maybe start April 1st. I am wondering, is there some kind of financial impact that they're going to experience that could potentially destabilize their operations if we go too quick? I'm not I don't know if the answer is yes. I'm just putting the question out there for consideration.
Yeah, and so a little background. I did speak to our director of finance about exactly how the financial implications work. So, I had questions similar but slightly different. So residents received their tax bills in the mail already, and it includes, in some respects, on one side of the road versus the other, 15 cents versus 10. That's the reality. So what would happen is that we would expect every resident to pay their tax bill according to the date, and that the director of finance would speak to the fire department to find out if we owe them any money and how much money they owe us, and if there were debentures. I don't think there are in this case, but I know, for example, there's a debenture with St. Peter's, so we would have to sort all those out. Assuming that the money that we collect is effective April 1st, I would absolutely expect that for every month after April 1st, we would pay the fire department who is responding to calls at that time. So it would not be a full year, even if, because we're already into this fiscal year. So I don't doubt that at any point that we make this, you would talk about significant changes, and I am mindful of that. That is a conversation for the fire department to have with their municipality, I think. I don't know that there is ever going to be a time when we make changes of this substantive nature that wouldn't have an impact on any fire department. We're having a similar conversation about Loch Lomond, and that fire department is, it's $1,000, and that's making a significant difference to a small little department like Loch Lomond. For me, I believe that when you make, it's been my experience that everything with fire services is really emotional. So whether it's dry hydrants or changes in fire services or boundary changes, and I'm not surprised by that. The people who provide these services are volunteers who put themselves in harm's way for us. And so this is a deeply committed group of volunteers, and so it should be no surprise that these are very emotional topics. Whenever I'm faced with an emotional decision, I try to decide how I'm going to decide. What are the things that drive my decision-making in this? And first and foremost, and I think I can speak for everybody, our concern is safety. We're talking about service to residents, but in this instance, the service is a service to keep you safe in a fire. And I appreciate that there are concerns about, so one of the things in Chief Malcolm's letter that I was taken by is that department, as an example, has good understanding of where the dead zones are in terms of cell coverage and so on. I think that those are important things to consider. And so I'm mindful of the fact that this letter from the chief in Loosedale says effective May 1st, you would think. That's 3 days from now. So I absolutely am in support of at least June and maybe even July, to be honest, so that there is an opportunity for all of that 30 years of knowledge to, for a good transition. But aside from that, I have faith in the decisions of our chief, and I believe the chief in Loosedale is, he went to elementary to junior high school at West Richmond School. Like, these are people who know this part of the county quite well, and I believe that they would not make this decision to move forward unless they had real confidence that residents were going to be safe in that instance. So if that's not the driving force, if that doesn't make the decision for you, because I think that residents are in good hands with either department. For me, I think we need to start thinking about what the changes in legislation mean, and I think that we need to be mindful of the fact that we give Richmond County dollars to a department that does not exist in the boundary of Richmond County, and that includes financing for trucks and so on. And we need to start thinking about how a municipally led department, should that be the direction we go, how that is complicated by working in an area that is not a part of our county. And so for me, I'm confident that Chief Marchand has good handle on what it would take to cover that area. So I'm comfortable moving forward, but I do think that we should, it should not be effective May 1st. I don't know if anybody else has any other. Councillor Marchand?
No, I'm okay with the date, May 31st. I mean, he does say May, he doesn't specify a date, so maybe he meant May 31st, but I'm okay with June. If staff figures they can do the necessary announcements that they need to make, I guess, for it. Because getting the form in is quick, like you said.
Yeah.
It's just, if we feel we have to notify the residents, then that may take some time.
Just to get the feel for the room, I'm willing to make an amendment to effective date of July 1st, and maybe, as the CAO said, we're halfway through the calendar year, but it also gives 1 quarter, and that might be easier for the department in West Bay Road as well as the finance department to take, 1 quarter of that levy for this fiscal year, transfer that accordingly. So I would make an amendment to change the effective date to July 1st. It also gives more time for Lewisdale to get familiar with the area, if there's a seconder on that.
Seconded by Councillor Johnson. Any discussion?
So what we're going to vote on now, unless there's any more conversation, is to amend the motion so that this would be effective July 1st. So is there any conversation on the amendment around the date? Hearing none, all those in favor of amending the motion so that this would take place on July 1st? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carried. So now back to the motion, which now will read that Lewisdale will take over this area, formerly covered by West Bay Road in Richmond County, effective July 1st. Is there any other conversation or comments? Can we go back to Deputy Warden's point? Is this something that we could ask as an information item? Should we vote yes on this, that we could ask for an information item? Because I do see in the letter that Chief Marchand says that he will be, our department will ensure that this area is included in all future fire safety inspections, community risk assessments, and emergency planning initiatives. We don't receive those for any other department about any other area, but I don't think, I have no problem requesting it in this instance. As an aside.
And Madam Chair, our fire services coordinator has been doing some work on this as well, and we can include that in the staff report on, medical first response and fire response, because fire response will remain unchanged as we have mutual aid. So in those mutual aid instances, wheels start turning in both fire departments as required, but it'll mainly be a change on the medical first response. But we do have some numbers gathered on that already, and once our fire services coordinator is back, we'll pull something together and circulate it out to council, just to demonstrate some of the background information.
Go ahead.
I just maybe like to comment on that.
Yes.
Troy, thank you. I think that would be fantastic. It's making me think that maybe we could do a little FAQ for the folks, especially who live in the impacted area, so they have accurate information, just to kind of allay some concern. It's because to your point, Warden, it does tend to be an emotionally charged topic, and with good reason, because sometimes people's lives depend on it, and,
for sure,
and homes and properties, etc. So maybe a little FAQ that would just kind of outline some of these key changes, that just to avoid the how it goes sometimes, right? Especially with social media and misinformation.
Yeah, and I think worst case scenario here would be that a change that we make may prompt people to think they stop calling 911 and that they actually call Loosedale. We actually don't want that at all. We want people to continue to do what they do, which is to call 911. So good information about any change that we might vote on at this point. So thank you for that. Any other concerns? Okay. Hearing none, I'll just remind us that the motion on the floor is that Council accept the request of the Loosedale and District Volunteer Fire Department to assume full responsibility for the area currently serviced by West Bay Road and District Volunteer Fire Department. And that is McIntyre Lake to Cleveland down to Lower River and Evanston north of the Strait Richmond Hospital effective July 1st, 2026. Last call and conversation on that. Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. And thanks to Chief Malcolm, who is here this evening, and thank you to Chief Marchand and both of their teams for the work that went into making sure that we had information in front of us, and for all that they have done and continue to do for residents in this region. Okay, so next item is just a one-page report that I provided to you on page 55, and so I am, I guess, looking for a motion here, and it would be a bit of a rubber stamp, but I think an important one. So Chief Mayors and Wardens was a group that was assembled and really quite vibrant pre-COVID, but with COVID came the decline and demise of many things, and this committee was one of them. So the committee was reestablished in the fall of 2024 or spring of 2025, I don't remember. But it is looking to kind of create some synergy around regional things that matter to us. And as you recall, several meetings ago, we have talked about cell service here for a long time and how it is just frustrating. And there have been letters that have gone from individual municipalities, and sometimes they get sent to all the other municipalities and so on. So the Chief Mayors and Wardens are taking on two issues, and so they are in line with our strategic plan, and they are in line with conversations we've had around the table. So what they're looking at is that there would be a letter that would say, we, the undersigned, who are members of the Strait Area Chiefs, Mayors, and Wardens, would like to write about, and in this case, I can't even find the right adjective, the horrible cell service in this region, and addressing things like how that impacts safety, how it impacts community economic development, etc. And that it would be signed by those municipalities who warden, chief, or mayor has the authority of their council. So, for example, even though municipality X may be a part of this group, if they don't have the authority by virtue of their council to be a signatory, they just wouldn't sign it. So there is no signatory as in the chiefs, mayors, and council. It would be those of us who have authority of council. So what I'm asking is for a motion that would give me the authority to be a signatory on behalf of council to letters to federal and provincial representatives regarding the two issues that are on our plate right now. The dismal state of cell service in the region. And the second is an issue related to housing in the town of Port Hawkesbury. So as new programs emerge, so the wind turbine program, shout out to NSCC, it's a fantastic program. I think 18 students this year, potential uptake on that program to eventually potentially run 2 cohorts at a time. So that's great news. It came to pass in our conversations that there is a residence at NSCC that was actually supposed to be one of 2, and the second one never happened. And so as municipalities like the town of Port Hawkesbury, but also ours as we look at construction of Basin Road and West, the more students that come to the programs, we're swimming upstream in our housing efforts if we have more students to house. And so Deputy Warden Mumbercat in her day job can speak to the fact that when they had the open house for students at that wind turbine program, a lot of the conversations are, you know, where can my kids live? So what we wanted to do was write a letter, a similar letter to the cell phone coverage one, which is to ask the government revisit the second residence, which was supposed to be a sister residence to the one in existence. So I'm looking for a motion to authorize me to be a signatory to one or both.
So moved.
Moved
I'll
by,
make a motion you could be a signatory to both, please.
so moved by Councillor Marchand and seconded by Deputy Warden Mumbercat. And the way this will work is there are key figureheads kind of within the group writing the letters, and then they will send it, but I will circulate it to you. And if there's something in there that you think is terrible, then I would certainly revisit that before I signed on our behalf. So unless there's any other conversation, all those in favor of the motion, okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carried. And the second one, or the third item on that list is really just an FYI. We had a presentation from 1015 The Hawk, and one of the things that they talked about is a news magazine called yourquadcounties.ca, I think. And so I have been interested in doing a Warden's newsletter for a while, but I have never figured out where to house it. I know that the CBRM mayor has one, but it's housed on his own website from what I can see. Tony Mancini is a councillor and former deputy warden in Halifax. He has one as well, but it seems to only go out on Facebook. I don't think it's Deputy Mayor, sorry. So it doesn't seem to have a home. So I am looking for some low tech ways to communicate. This would be so I'm letting you know that I'm going to start doing a newsletter, and I'm looking to kind of publish it there. I have it drafted, send it to you tomorrow. But what I'm actually looking at including in that would be I'd like to do a little bit of each month a profile on one of our committees, just what the committee does, how often it meets, what the mandate is. And I'd also like to actually go through our meetings of council, regular and special, and to just say, look, motions of council are how we make decisions. And these are the motions that were passed this month, not the minutes and that kind of thing, but just the idea that we passed, motion on dry hydrants and all the ones that we passed tonight. So just to try to look at some lower tech ways to communicate with residents once a month. It is a great thing to be able to communicate in the reflections, but the lead up time to that is you write it. I think I have to have the next one written in June, and it doesn't go out until a month later, and it's only every 3 months. So happy to circulate that to you and to try to build some ways to communicate with folks in a little lower tech model. So I'll circulate that to you unless anybody has any questions. Okay, next are correspondence items. So we have no items that require our action. However, we have several that are for your information. And, sorry, phone. Okay, so on page 55 to 56, we had asked that libraries be a advocacy issue at the NSFM, and so this is a letter from the municipality, or sorry, from the NSFM with our original letter talking about how how they're pursuing that. We have a letter on pages 57 to 58, which is from the Municipality of Barrington, which goes back to the letter that Antigonish County wrote originally. We actually wrote a similar letter in February. It's included in our March Committee of the Whole package saying that we agreed, but there are other municipalities aligning themselves with that as well. So that one is from the municipality in Barrington. And I believe there's one a little farther down, number 5, from Shelburne. So they are all kind of singing from the same choir book. The item number 3 is the letter from Dorothy Bernard, who is the chair of the Senior Take Action Coalition, regarding at the time the letter speaks of an impending strike, but we know we are deep in the midst of that. We have a letter from the Honourable John A. MacDonald on page 61, talking about all of the changes that took place as part of the legislative amendments. And as we mentioned, the letter from Chief Bradley Malcolm is included in our deliberations under the catchment area. And finally, yes, go ahead.
On the one from Minister of Municipal Affairs, some of the changes they've made, they speak of enabling councils to delegate CEO performance oversight to a committee. Do you think that they mean external committees, or just because we are the committee of council, so it's just us, or are they speaking we could delegate it to a total other committee that we're not on to be independent? Because they speak of independence.
I know we have a neighboring municipality that has, we've seen publicized that neighboring municipality is actually hiring an HR firm to do a review of that CAO. But I believe in
This instance, instead of it being a requirement for all 5 of us, it could be a subcommittee. So, for example, I think in previous years, the audit committee was not every member of council, right? In some instances, PAC was not every member of council. So I think it would be something that a smaller committee of council, I know with EDPC, it's a small committee of the personnel committee, which is a committee of the board. So it's that kind of model.
My thought in this is, do you think, CEO, the reason they're doing this is to have external members from the public on these kind of committees? Is that the idea here that they're?
I think it's more for a subcommittee of council myself. But I can request clarification on that as well. I read it as a subcommittee of council. Unless somebody had exposure and working relations with your chief executive, I don't know how somebody outside the organization would be able to help you or assist you in an evaluation. I'm not sure.
So we'll turn over to
Other than a professional HR person,
Yeah,
right?
Councillor Brent.
I guess that's why it's good to ask these questions, because we may all be interpreting it differently. I wouldn't worry about it too much with a council of 5. I'm thinking more of some of the larger councils. If you had like, what's HRM 16 or something like that, and you have places that are 10, 11 and so on. Some of those, maybe it's a subcommittee where it's not, 10, 11 people. But whereas we're a small council, I think it makes more sense for all of us to be. So I'm not sure if that's something I'd concern myself with here, but it would be good to get clarification just in case we're missing the point on it.
It's also interesting, we are a council of districts, but, we have municipalities provincially that are they're not districts. They're just, the top.
large.
So then you're not actually, at large. So you're not actually representing a district. So you could, in that instance, not worry too much about representing a geographic area. But, yeah, we can certainly ask for, go ahead, Councillor.
Well, I guess my thought is, I guess you speak of having a HR firm, and you worry that the public wouldn't have, I guess, good evidence to contribute to the committee. But a HR firm coming in, where are they gathering their information from? They have to gather it from us or the public. So that's just my thought. If some public that you interact with would be on these committees with us, they could give us some extra, information. Because some of us on a daily basis, Troy, we don't interact with you on a daily basis as the warden would. So that's my thought, because you interact with a lot of the public. You're at committee meetings with people, you get calls from them. So that's my thought, is having those people with us. Maybe they could give us, some other insight that could help us. I would see it as only a help for all of us. So that's my thought.
We have a new municipal advisor. So I think that could be a really good question for our newly minted municipal advisor.
would have known Sundays.
Yeah, we are going to have a new municipal advisor, and so it is somebody who's going to, congratulations to Jeremy Martel, who is going to be working with the province now, and situated in the region where they advise, which is really good news. I think it is a conversation we can absolutely have, but it would involve a motion of council creating a committee, the committee having terms of reference. So it would be a long journey to get us to that point, but I absolutely think we can ask for some clarification.
Happy to.
I think the only change in the terms of reference would be the number of committee members. It's not, we wouldn't have to change everything else. just a number of members, that's all.
We don't have,
Committee of council, that is the Performance Review Committee.
Okay,
Right? We'd have to create that committee, yep, yep. Okay, but yeah, so when, we can get some clarification on that, and bring that to a committee of the whole report at some point. Or just create it by email, to see what the options are. And so just on the, so that was item 4. 5 is another one about the power. We talked about the West Bay Road letter, and then the last one on this list is from the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities regarding property tax homes rebuilt after demolition. So again, this was our request, or destruction, our request for it to be an advocacy issue. So this is them keeping us in the loop about their plans. I see your hand on the button there.
Yeah, I guess in relation to this, if we had a different system, we wouldn't even have to worry about this, a system where every home would kind of pay the same regardless. You wouldn't have to worry of this kind of setup because, yes, someone builds a new home, replaces their home that burnt, I guess. What the advocacy piece here is that their assessment would go back to the previous home. As long as the home, from what I understand here, as long as the home is not really changed size-wise and stuff like that. But I guess if we had a system where every home paid the same,
And yet we don't. Okay. Okay, so is there any other questions around these correspondence? Hearing none, there is a review of action items, is in your package from pages 68 to 75. If anyone has any questions about those. Just 118 does talk about terms of reference. So I believe that we now, because we did not need to make revisions to MEMAC, so this was the last, because item number 261 actually says that the Fire Services Committee terms of reference are tabled until legislation makes more sense to us. Yep. So is there any other? Okay, hearing none. There were no other items added to the agenda. So if there are any questions from the gallery or from the public about items after committee reports, happy to entertain those now. Again, the telephone number is 902-226-9885. So happy to hear those. Yep, and wait till it turns red.
Chief Bradley Malcolm, West Bay Road Fire Department. The question on the boundaries, you said McIntyre's Lake to Cleveland. If you actually look at the actual boundary, that's Inverness County. Because Richmond County cuts off right on the other side of Lower River Road. And then it switches over to Inverness County. If you were turning off to go down to Yorville and Granville, yeah, it's just on the other side of that road. That's where it switches to Inverness County.
right, so I think the motion was
Clearly Richmond County, so yeah, Richmond County boundary, and that includes, but the reason why McIntyre Lake sounded right to me is because I know our MLA, Trevor Boudreau, has a house in McIntyre Lake, and actually his garage is in Inverness County and his house is in Richmond County. So I believe, yeah, but it's actually as it crosses through there.
It's not, like I say, within his driveway.
Yeah.
So I think there is a part that we would think of, but the motion was clearly just Richmond County territory, like
Richmond County land, and that the name, I may have gotten the names wrong, I apologize.
On the documentation, it said McIntyre's Lake, which is Inverness County.
So
Is all of McIntyre Lake?
all of
McIntyre's Lake, because I thought that Trevor's.
All the tracks.
Well, yeah, no, so I know what you mean. That's a tricky one because from the road, you're still in Inverness County.
But
Driving
going
in
down,
through that
yeah,
subdivision, you can get into Richmond.
right. So Trevor Boudreau's house, the driveway is in Inverness County, but his address is McIntyre Lake, but he actually pays taxes
Yeah, it
in
goes
Richmond
on
County.
Main.
Yeah, he goes down, you know what I mean?
I think so.
Yeah, so yeah, it would only be the Richmond County land, I guess, Richmond County territory. So nothing in Inverness County.
Next question. So are you going, are you going to contact the fire departments, or are the two fire departments going to get together to get you the right documentation?
So a couple things. First, the documentation that is required is a one-page form for 911. So that would be the only thing that the municipality would have to, that would accompany the motion of council. So the minutes of this meeting that say that would be attached to that. I believe it is the role of staff, so that would be our emergency measures coordinator, to meet with Loosedale and to address the concerns that you put in your letter with Loosedale and say, look, we've given you this additional time and we expect you to provide, get any information. So yeah, we would like to see you sit down for sure. And we would like to see that happen with our staff, which is Steve Marcellus.
He's a member of both departments, right?
Yeah, but that's neither, he's there representing us, whether he is or isn't is, yeah. So even if he wasn't a fireman, we would still expect him to fulfill that role.
Yeah, I think what the chief is asking in the comments that you made about getting the information that they're aware of for their area to Loosedale. And I think that's what Bradley is referring to. So that the
Right.
information that they are specific, that they know specifically for their area, they can transfer that to Loosedale, is what I thought you mentioned earlier as well.
Well, yeah, the letter that you wrote was very good, and so the example that certainly spoke to me was dead zones, right? Cell dead zones. So I think that it is our emergency services staff person's job, given that in our discussions here, we have identified, in agreement with your letter, that there are some things that we would like to be confident that you have given all the information that you think is important and that it's been received by Loosedale. So we would expect our staff person to facilitate those conversations.
Okay, I'm going to comment on Steve Marcellus' letter when he stated that our fire department was not confident to take care of that area. That's why he requested Loosedale take over that area. And that was a false statement. Also, with the amalgamation, he made a statement, we had a problem with members.
I take your comments about membership very seriously, and I think that you have captured that very correctly. Okay. Everyone is struggling with volunteer fire department membership. I think that is captured in the governance review from FSANS. What I will say is, I hear what you're saying, and I think I didn't make this decision, Bradley, thinking that your department could not provide good service.
Okay.
I made this decision believing that both fire departments can provide good service based on the fact that you both said you can, and I have faith in our fire chiefs. For me, given that I believe both can, I think that it makes more sense from us for it to be the Loosedale Fire Department that does that. But I hear what you're saying, and I want you to know that I'm not sitting here believing that we need to make this change because the service that your company provides was not adequate.
Can I say something?
Go ahead.
Well, Bradley, in your letter, you kind of speak since January, things have gotten much better.
Yes.
But what Steve is kind of saying, he just says they have experienced this. I took that kind of was past tense, because you say since January things have been much better. So I don't think he's specifically saying, from what I read, and I'm not good at English like I tell everybody, from what I read, I don't think, yeah, like numbers guy. But I don't take it that he's saying that those things are current, just that you guys have had some ongoing challenges. And as you state, and the warden recouped that, yes, probably departments right across Canada and rural departments are struggling with membership. And one of our councillors is a firefighter, so I'm sure he's aware of things like that in the far rural regions of Richmond County and right across Canada, I'm sure. So, yeah, but in defense of Steve, I don't think he's saying that it's continuous. I just thought he said they had. So that's how I took it, because your letter clarified that.
Well, he also mentioned us amalgamating with Port Hastings. That was just discussions. There's nothing set in stone in that.
Okay.
There was, what happens between Port Hastings and West Bay Road regardless of catchment area, is really none of our business. Like, that's, we have faith that the conversations that are happening between the good people of Port Hastings and the good people of West Bay Road, everybody is trying to do what's in the best interests of each department and collectively for residents. To me, that wouldn't matter, no matter what those conversations look like. That wouldn't impact my concern in this front.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brad.
Thank you, Brenda.
Yeah, and there's, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Any other,
So we didn't get any phone calls and we have no other gallery members, but, so hearing no other questions, and since there's no other business on the agenda, the meeting of council is adjourned.
Okay, thank